The stranger who walked into my grandson's school expo knew something that could destroy our entire family. At 71 years old, I believed there were very few surprises left in life. I had buried my husband, raised my son, and spent years watching my grandson Noah grow into a bright, kind young man. That Saturday morning was supposed to be a celebration. Noah's middle school was hosting its annual Science and Technology Expo, and he had been talking about it for weeks. He wanted everything to be perfect. He had spent countless evenings building his project at the dining room table, while Olivia hovered nearby, offering encouragement. Daniel had taken time off work. I brought homemade cookies. We were all proud of him. The school gymnasium buzzed with excitement when we arrived. Rows of student projects filled the room. Parents moved from table to table. Teachers smiled as children eagerly explained their displays. Noah stood beside his project wearing a blue button-down shirt and the biggest grin I had seen all year. "Grandma, come look," he said as soon as he spotted me. I walked over and listened while he explained every detail of his presentation. His enthusiasm was contagious. Daniel clapped him on the shoulder. Olivia smiled proudly. For a moment, everything felt exactly as it should. Hours passed quickly. Judges reviewed projects. Families mingled. Awards were scheduled for the afternoon. Then something happened that changed everything. I noticed a man standing near the back of the gym. At first, there was nothing unusual about him. Parents and visitors filled the room. Yet something about the way he watched Noah caught my attention. He was not casually observing. He seemed completely focused. His eyes rarely left my grandson. The man looked to be in his early 40s. Tall, well-dressed, serious. I assumed he might be a relative of another student. But when Noah laughed at something Daniel said, I saw an expression cross the stranger's face that I could not explain. It looked like recognition. My stomach tightened. A few minutes later, Olivia noticed him too. The change in her expression was immediate. The color drained from her face. Her smile vanished. She gripped the edge of a nearby table so tightly that her knuckles turned white. I had known Olivia for 13 years. I had never seen her react that way to anyone. "Olivia," I said quietly, "are you all right?" She turned toward me too quickly. "Yes," she answered, but her voice sounded strained. Then she looked away again. The man had started walking toward us. Daniel remained focused on Noah's project, unaware of anything unusual. The stranger stopped only a few feet away. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then he looked directly at Noah. His eyes filled with emotion. Finally, he turned toward Olivia and said words that seemed to freeze the entire room around us. "You never told him about me." For a moment, nobody reacted. The noise of the expo continued around us. Students presented projects. Parents applauded. Teachers moved through the gymnasium. Yet inside our small circle, everything seemed frozen. Olivia stared at the stranger as if she had seen a ghost. Daniel looked from one face to another, struggling to understand what was happening. Noah remained completely unaware of the meaning behind the exchange. "Mom," Daniel asked quietly, "do you know this man?" Olivia swallowed hard but did not answer. The stranger finally turned toward Daniel. "My name is Jack Mercer," he said calmly, "and I think we need to have a conversation." Daniel frowned immediately. "About what?" Jack looked at Noah for a brief moment before returning his attention to Olivia. "About something that should have been discussed a long time ago." I watched Olivia closely. She looked terrified, not embarrassed, not annoyed, terrified. That difference mattered. People can hide irritation. Fear is much harder to disguise. Noah glanced between the adults. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. His innocent question broke the tension for a second. Olivia immediately stepped toward him. "Of course not," she said quickly. "Everything is fine." But nothing was fine. Everyone could see it. Daniel's expression darkened. "Olivia," he said, "what is going on?" Before she could answer, an announcement echoed through the gymnasium. The award ceremony would begin in 5 minutes. Families started gathering near the stage area. Noah looked excited again. "Grandma, I have to go," he said. "My project made the finals." I forced a smile and hugged him. "Go enjoy your moment." As Noah hurried away, I noticed Jack watching him with an expression that surprised me. There was sadness there, and pride. The combination made me uneasy. Once Noah was out of earshot, Daniel stepped closer. "Somebody better explain this right now." Olivia closed her eyes briefly. "Not here," she whispered. "Please." Jack nodded. "I agree." Daniel looked ready to argue, but the crowd was moving toward the stage. Teachers were calling students into position. Whatever secret existed, this was not the place to expose it. After the ceremony, Olivia said, "We will talk after the ceremony." Jack reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed a worn photograph. He handed it to me instead of Daniel. My hands trembled slightly as I looked down. The picture appeared old, at least 13 years old. A much younger Olivia stood beside a man I immediately recognized as Jack. They were smiling, standing close together, looking very much like a couple. The date printed in the corner stopped my heart. It had been taken only months before Noah was born. When I raised my eyes, Olivia looked away. Daniel stared at the photograph in disbelief. Then Jack quietly said something that made the situation even worse. "That is only the beginning." The award ceremony ended with applause, photographs, and proud families gathering around students. Noah won second place in his division and could not stop smiling. Under any other circumstances, it would have been one of the happiest days of our lives. Instead, every smile felt strained. Every conversation felt unfinished. The photograph Jack had shown us remained in my thoughts. So did the fear I had seen in Olivia's eyes. After the ceremony, we agreed to meet in a small conference room near the school office. It was quiet there, away from the crowds and excitement. Noah sat beside Daniel, still holding his award ribbon. He sensed the tension now. Children always do. Jack remained near the door, giving everyone space. Olivia sat across from him without making eye contact. For several moments, nobody spoke. Finally, Daniel placed the photograph on the table. "Start talking," he said quietly. Jack nodded. 13 years ago, Olivia and I were together. Olivia closed her eyes. Noah looked confused. Daniel remained completely still. When she stopped answering my calls, I thought she had simply moved on. Jack continued. "A few months later, I learned she had left the state." Olivia's hands trembled slightly. "That is not the whole story," she whispered. Jack looked at her. "Then tell them." She did not. The silence stretched between them. I had never seen Olivia so fragile. The confident woman who managed every family gathering and solved every problem seemed to have disappeared. Jack reached into a folder he had brought with him and removed several papers. "I did not come here to create chaos," he said. "I came because I recently discovered something I should have known years ago." Daniel stared at the documents. "What exactly did you discover?" Jack hesitated before answering. "That Noah exists." The words landed heavily in the room. Noah looked up immediately. "What does that mean?" he asked. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I felt my heart ache for him. He was only 12 years old, caught inside a story he never asked to be part of. Jack's voice softened. "It means I never knew about you." Daniel looked at Olivia. "Is that true?" She stared at the table. Then, very slowly, she nodded. No one spoke. The room suddenly felt smaller. Every answer seemed to create 3 new questions. If Jack was telling the truth, then he had spent 12 years unaware that Noah existed. If Olivia was telling the truth, she had carried this secret alone for more than a decade. Neither possibility felt easy to understand. Then Noah asked the question none of us were prepared for. He looked directly at Jack and said, "Why were you watching me like you already knew me?" Jack swallowed hard before answering. "Because the moment I saw you, I saw myself." The room remained silent after Jack's answer. Noah looked down at the ribbon in his hands, as though it might somehow explain everything. Daniel sat motionless beside him. Olivia wiped her eyes, but still could not bring herself to meet anyone's gaze. I had spent decades believing that family secrets eventually found a way into the light, but I had never imagined witnessing one unfold like this. Jack carefully opened the folder he had brought and removed several documents. "I know how this looks," he said quietly, "and I know none of you have a reason to trust me. That is why I brought proof." Daniel leaned forward. "Proof of what?" Jack placed several papers on the table. "Proof that I spent years trying to understand what happened." The documents included old letters, returned mail, and records of address searches. Nothing dramatic, nothing sensational, just evidence of a man who had been looking for answers. Olivia stared at the papers without touching them. "I never thought you would find me," she whispered. Jack looked genuinely surprised. "I was not looking for you anymore," he replied. "I was trying to understand why you disappeared." Noah looked up. "What does that mean?" His voice sounded small. Too small for a conversation this heavy. Jack hesitated before answering. "It means there was a time when your mother and I cared about each other. Then one day she was gone." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. I could almost see the weight settling onto his shoulders. Yet what surprised me most was that he was not angry. Not yet. He seemed more confused than anything else. "Did you know about Noah?" he asked. Jack shook his head immediately. "No. If I had known, I would have spent the last 12 years trying to be part of his life." Olivia finally looked up. "You do not know that." "I know exactly that," Jack answered softly. There was no hostility in his voice, only sadness. That made the situation even harder. Villains are easy to understand. Ordinary people carrying old mistakes are not. Noah glanced at his mother. "Mom, is he telling the truth?" Olivia's eyes filled again. "Yes," she said. "He is telling the truth about that part." The room grew quiet once more. Then Daniel asked the question everyone had been avoiding. "Why did you never tell me?" Olivia pressed her hands together. For several seconds, I thought she might refuse to answer. Instead, she took a deep breath. "Because when I found out I was pregnant, everything in my life was falling apart. I was scared. I made decisions that felt necessary at the time." Daniel listened without interrupting. Jack listened too. "And later?" Daniel asked. "Why not tell me later?" Olivia lowered her head. "Because every year that passed made it harder." Nobody argued with that. Some secrets do not grow smaller with time. They grow roots. Then Jack reached into his folder one final time and removed a sealed envelope. He placed it carefully on the table. "There is something else you all need to see," he said. For several seconds, nobody touched the envelope. It sat in the center of the table like a question none of us wanted answered. Jack finally slid it toward Daniel. "You should open it," he said. Daniel hesitated before breaking the seal. Inside was a stack of papers. The first page appeared to be a copy of a certified letter. The second contained delivery records. The third was a response from a legal office dated more than 12 years earlier. As Daniel read, the color slowly faded from his face. "What is it?" I asked quietly. He handed me the documents. My hands trembled slightly as I reviewed them. The certified letter had been sent shortly before Noah was born. According to the records, Jack had attempted to contact Olivia after learning she might be pregnant. The delivery confirmation showed the letter had reached its destination. There was even a signature acknowledging receipt. I looked up. Olivia had already started crying. "You received this?" Daniel asked. She nodded. "Yes." The room felt smaller with every answer. "Why did you never tell him?" Daniel asked. Olivia pressed a hand against her forehead. "Because I was terrified." Jack remained silent. He seemed to understand that this part belonged to her. "Terrified of what?" Daniel continued. Olivia stared at the table. "Everything. I was 26. I had just lost my job. My father was sick. My life felt completely out of control." Nobody interrupted. Even Noah sat quietly, listening. "When Jack and I separated, I convinced myself it was over," she said. "Then I found out I was pregnant." Her voice cracked. "I thought I could handle everything alone." Jack lowered his eyes. "You should have told me." "I know," Olivia whispered. "I know that now." The sadness in the room felt heavier than anger. That surprised me. When secrets are exposed, people expect shouting and blame. What I saw instead was regret. Years and years of regret. Daniel continued reading the documents. Then he stopped at the final page. "What is this?" he asked. Jack took a breath. "Several years after the letter, I hired an investigator to locate Olivia." Olivia looked up immediately. "You did?" "Yes." "Then why did you stop?" Jack gave a small, painful smile. "Because the investigator told me there was no child." Nobody spoke. Olivia looked completely stunned. "What?" she whispered. Jack pointed to the report. "That is what I was told." Olivia grabbed the page and read it herself. Her expression changed from sadness to shock. "That is impossible." I leaned forward. "Are you saying someone gave him false information?" Olivia nodded slowly. "Yes." The realization settled over the room like a storm cloud. For 12 years, everyone had been living inside a story that was not entirely true. Then Noah quietly asked the question none of us had considered. Who told him there was no child? Noah's question lingered in the room long after he asked it. Who told Jack there was no child? It was such a simple question, yet none of us had an answer. Olivia continued staring at the report in disbelief. She read the same paragraph several times as though the words might change. They did not. The investigator's notes clearly stated that no child had been found and that Olivia had reportedly moved on with her life. Jack sat quietly across the table. For the first time since arriving at the school, he looked less like a man carrying certainty and more like someone carrying confusion. "I never saw this report before today," Olivia finally said. "I had no idea someone told you that." Daniel leaned back in his chair and rubbed his forehead. The emotional weight of the afternoon seemed to be catching up with him. "Then somebody lied," he said, "either to Jack or to the investigator." Nobody argued. The possibility hung over all of us. I looked at Olivia carefully. Over the years, I had seen her navigate difficult situations with confidence. What sat before me now was different. She looked genuinely shocked. That mattered. If she was acting, she deserved an award. But I did not think she was acting. I thought she was discovering new pieces of the story alongside the rest of us. Jack opened another section of his folder. "There is something else," he said. He removed copies of old emails and contact records. Most led nowhere. Dead ends. Unanswered messages. Returned correspondence. A decade of frustration compressed into a few sheets of paper. "I stopped searching after the investigator's report," he admitted. "I believed there was nothing left to find." Noah listened quietly. Then he looked at Daniel. "Dad," he asked. Daniel immediately turned toward him. "Yes." Noah swallowed hard. "Are you still my dad?" The question broke something inside me. Out of everything discussed that day, that was the only thing Noah truly cared about. Not documents. Not investigations. Not history. Family. Daniel did not hesitate. He moved his chair closer and placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. "Nothing changes that," he said firmly. "I have been your father every day of your life. I will be your father tomorrow too." Noah nodded slowly. Relief appeared on his face for the first time in hours. Across the table, Jack lowered his eyes. There was pain there, but also understanding. "I never came here to replace anyone," he said quietly. Daniel looked at him for a long moment before responding. "Then why did you come?" Jack took a deep breath. "Because a month ago, I found something the investigator never gave me." Everyone looked up. He reached into the folder again and removed a faded document. The original case file. Olivia stared at it. Daniel stared at it. Even I felt my pulse quicken. Jack placed it on the table between us. "And according to this file," he said, "someone intentionally removed information that would have led me directly to Noah." The original case file changed the atmosphere in the room immediately. Until that moment, we had been dealing with assumptions, memories, and painful explanations. Now we were looking at something concrete. Jack carefully opened the file and spread several pages across the table. The documents were old but well preserved. Dates, notes, interview summaries, and contact information filled the pages. Daniel leaned forward first. Olivia followed. Even Noah seemed unable to look away. "How did you get this?" I asked. Jack pointed to one of the pages. "The investigation company was sold last year. During the transfer, old archived records became available. I requested everything connected to my case." He paused. "That is when I found out the report I received was not the complete file." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Meaning somebody edited it?" Jack nodded. "Or removed part of it." Olivia slowly picked up a page near the bottom of the stack. The moment she read it, her eyes widened. "Oh my God," she whispered. Daniel immediately turned toward her. "What is it?" She handed him the paper. It contained notes from an investigator who had apparently located her nearly 12 years earlier. According to the record, Olivia had been living at the same apartment where Daniel first met her. More importantly, the investigator had documented the possibility of a child. The note was brief but unmistakable. The information should have led directly to Noah. Instead, it never appeared in the final report Jack received. "I never knew this existed," Olivia said. Her voice trembled. "Nobody ever contacted me." Jack looked equally disturbed. "Because I never saw it." Silence filled the room. For the first time since this started, the focus shifted away from Olivia's secret and toward a new mystery. Someone had interfered with the truth long before any of us understood what was happening. Noah looked between the adults. "So nobody lied about me?" he asked. The innocence of the question struck all of us. Daniel immediately pulled his chair closer. "Somebody clearly made a terrible decision," he said carefully. "We just do not know who yet." Noah nodded, though I could tell he was still trying to understand a situation far beyond his years. Jack turned another page. Then he stopped. His expression changed instantly. "There is a name here." Everyone looked up. He pointed toward a handwritten notation near the margin. It identified an independent contractor who had worked on portions of the investigation. None of us recognized the name. Olivia shook her head. Daniel did the same. But what caught my attention was the date written beside it. The notation had been added only 2 days before the final report was issued. Can that person explain what happened? I asked. Jack nodded slowly. Possibly. Daniel folded his arms. Then we need answers. For the first time all afternoon, Olivia agreed without hesitation. Yes, she said quietly. Because if someone changed that report, then all of us have been living with the consequences ever since. Then Jack revealed one final detail. He had already contacted the former contractor, and the contractor had agreed to meet the following week. The following week felt longer than any I could remember. Ever since the meeting at the school, our family had been living in a strange space between the past and the future. Questions lingered everywhere. Noah returned to school and tried to focus on ordinary things. Daniel went back to work. Olivia spent most evenings sitting quietly at the kitchen table, lost in thought. As for me, I watched all of them and realized how much damage uncertainty can cause. Sometimes the truth hurts less than not knowing it. The meeting with the former contractor was scheduled for Thursday afternoon at a small law office downtown. Jack arranged everything. By the time we arrived, everyone seemed nervous. Even Jack looked uneasy. The contractor, a woman named Rebecca Hayes, greeted us politely and invited us into a conference room. She appeared to be in her late 50s and carried herself with the calm confidence of someone who had spent years dealing with complicated situations. Once everyone was seated, Rebecca opened a thin file and looked around the table. I understand why you are here, she said, and I believe you deserve an explanation. Nobody interrupted. Rebecca removed several documents and placed them in front of us. 12 years ago, I was hired to assist with portions of the investigation Mr. Mercer requested. Jack nodded. The report I received was incomplete. Rebecca sighed. Yes. The room instantly became tense. Why? Daniel asked. Rebecca folded her hands. Because the lead investigator made a decision that should never have been made. Jack stared at her. What decision? She pointed to one of the documents. The investigator located evidence suggesting there was a child. He also located information connecting that child to Olivia. Olivia closed her eyes. Daniel looked stunned. Rebecca continued. However, he believed reopening contact would create instability for everyone involved. Instead of reporting all findings, he omitted part of the information before the final report was delivered. Nobody spoke. The explanation felt almost impossible to accept. Years of confusion, years of separation, years of missed opportunities. All because one person decided he knew what was best for strangers. You are saying he made that choice himself? I asked. Rebecca nodded. Yes. There was no conspiracy, no payment, no manipulation, just poor judgment. Jack stared at the table. He decided my future for me. And ours, Olivia whispered. Rebecca looked genuinely regretful. I challenged the decision at the time, but I was not the final authority. Silence filled the room again. Then Noah spoke. So nobody was trying to keep us apart? Rebecca smiled sadly. Not intentionally. That answer seemed to affect everyone differently. Daniel looked relieved. Olivia looked heartbroken. Jack looked exhausted. As we prepared to leave, Rebecca handed Jack one final document. It contained information that had never reached him 12 years earlier. Jack read it quietly. Then he looked up at Olivia with tears in his eyes. If I had received this, he said softly, I would have come looking for both of you immediately. The months that followed changed our family in ways none of us could have predicted. Not because a secret had been revealed, but because the truth finally had room to exist. For a long time, I believe the biggest question was who Noah's biological father was. In the end, that turned out to be the easiest question to answer. The harder question was what we would do with the answer once we had it. A few weeks after our meeting with Rebecca, Noah asked if he could spend an afternoon with Jack. There was hesitation at first. Understandably so. 12 years cannot be replaced by a single conversation. But nobody wanted to make decisions for Noah anymore. Too many people had already done that. Daniel agreed. Olivia agreed. Even Jack seemed cautious. He understood that trust is earned slowly. Their first meeting was simple. They visited a science museum, talked about robotics, and shared lunch. When Noah came home that evening, he seemed lighter. Not different, just lighter. As time passed, more meetings followed. Sometimes Daniel joined them. Sometimes he did not. What impressed me most was the way both men behaved. Jack never tried to take a place that belonged to someone else. Daniel never treated Jack like an enemy. They were connected by an unusual truth, but also by something more important. They both cared about the same boy. One evening, several months later, our family gathered for dinner at my house. The atmosphere felt completely different from the tension that had filled so many rooms before. Noah talked excitedly about school. Daniel laughed more than he had in years. Olivia seemed calmer. The constant burden of secrecy was finally gone. Even Jack was there, sitting quietly at the far end of the table, still learning how to fit into a story he should have been part of long ago. At one point, Noah stood and raised a glass of sparkling cider. Everyone looked at him. "I want to say something," he announced. We smiled and waited. "This year started with a science expo," he said. "I thought it was just about a project, but it turned out to be about finding answers." The room became quiet. Noah looked toward Daniel first. "Thank you for being my dad every single day." Daniel's eyes immediately filled with tears. Then Noah looked toward Jack. "And thank you for coming when you finally found me." Jack lowered his head for a moment, overcome with emotion. Finally, Noah looked at Olivia. "And thank you for telling the truth, even when it was hard." Olivia wiped away tears and smiled. I looked around the table and realized something important. Families are not built by perfect decisions. They are built by what people choose to do after imperfect ones. The truth had not destroyed us. It had exposed old wounds, painful mistakes, and years of misunderstanding. But it had also created an opportunity. As the evening came to an end, I watched Noah laughing with Daniel and Jack at the same table. And for the first time since that unforgettable day at the school, I felt completely at peace. Sometimes the person who arrives with the truth does not take a family apart. Sometimes they help it become whole.